Boosie's recent handgun possession, punishment, even after entering a plea. However, the most stunning aspect of the sentence isn't the sentence itself. Boosie claims that the system is framing him.
And I was sentenced to third offense marijuana. 10 years? I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me out.
Some claim that this is all related to his victory in his death row case. Let me explain when being honest backfires. The ghetto is in shock, the streets are bustling, and hip-hop recently lost one of its most devoted troops, Torrance Ivy Hatch Jr. Better known in the culture as a drunken badass, he now accepted a plea that might mean his permanent departure from the game.
Just a plea that I'm doing on August 26th.
But really, we need to go back to the beginning in order to comprehend how we got here. When young Torrance first took up the microphone and began spitting bars about the struggle, it was in the gritty neighborhoods of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Boosie's criminal record would come back to haunt him in ways he never could have predicted, and his legal background was characterized by multiple run-ins with the law. Back in 2008, what should have been just another day in the neighborhood became the start of a nightmare that is still going strong, laying the groundwork for all of this turmoil. When East Baton Rouge sheriff's officers discovered marijuana and a Glock handgun in Boosie's car on the 22nd of October 2008, they took him into custody. When East Baton Rouge sheriff's deputies discovered marijuana and a Glock handgun in Boosie's car, they took him into custody. Being busted in possession of marijuana is nothing new, as any street guy knows. However, the fact that this was Boosie's third marijuana-related incident made all the difference in how the system was going to railroad him.
Sure. Now, how long have you been fighting this thing from the very, very beginning?
I've been fighting for probably 3 years now, probably.
3 years.
The prison industrial complex, which has been ruining black males for generations, caught up with Purr, who was just beginning to make waves in the seedy South hip-hop scene. On the 22nd of September 2009, Boosie entered a guilty plea to the third offense charge of marijuana possession. After that, there was some blatant judicial nonsense. On the 9th of November 2009, Judge Chip Moore extended the 2-year sentence to 4 years after learning that Boosie had broken his house arrest in the interim between the plea and sentencing.
It was a state case. The feds came, picked it up. They had a ruling in the Supreme Court that went in my favor. And the case got dropped by the judge. The case got dropped.
However, the system's efforts to remove this young black man from the projects were not finished. Even though he was already incarcerated, they chose to add charges that would keep him there for almost 10 years. Boosie attempted to sneak drugs into prison in 2011 while still incarcerated and was charged with more drug-related offenses. His sentence was increased to 8 years when he entered a guilty plea to these counts. The up-and-coming rapper who had been making waves in the industry was abruptly facing nearly a decade in prison.
And I was sentenced to third offense marijuana. 10 years? I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me out.
The worst was yet to come. On the 17th of June 2010, Boosie was charged with first-degree murder of Terry Boyd, who was killed in 2009 in what would turn out to be one of the most well-known murder cases in Louisiana's recent history. The prosecution was attempting to establish that Boosie had, as part of a murder-for-hire scheme over the beat, hired Michael Marlowe, Mike Loudon, to run his company. The stakes were really high. He was facing the death penalty if found guilty.
I was sentenced to 10 for third offense marijuana.
Yeah.
How you know if I'm drug addict if you never send me to rehab? I was sent straight to the pen. How am I, if I'm a drug addict if you've never offered me rehab?
Although they never had enough proof to charge Boosie with those crimes, the prosecution were attempting to portray him as a cold-blooded killer who may have been involved in at least 5 more deaths. Prosecutors used everything from phone records to Boosie's rap lyrics as so-called proof, turning the case into a circus. In the courtroom, prosecutors were breaking down songs like 187 Inches and Body Bag, which he had recorded around the time Terry Boyd was killed, line by line. They said these weren't simply bars, but genuine admissions. On the 28th of June 2010, Boosie pled not guilty in a Louisiana court. His defense team pressed aggressively, claiming that Michael Loudon's evidence was as unreliable as a crack house during an earthquake, and that the prosecution's whole case was based on it. The defense didn't even call witnesses, since they were so certain, knowing that a conviction would not only put an end to Boosie's career, but also possibly his life. The whole hip-hop community was holding its breath. After less than 10 minutes of deliberation, a jury cleared Boosie of the murder allegation on the 11th of May 2012. Everyone knew what many already knew. Because of that hasty decision, the prosecution's case was as weak as diluted alcohol. Boosie and his supporters celebrated the acquittal as a huge victory, but the harm had already been done. The system had robbed years of his best years. Despite beating the murder rap, Boosie remained imprisoned on those drug-related crimes. He served about 5 years of his 8-year sentence before being ultimately released on the 5th of March 2014. He had been permanently altered by the experience, albeit his early release was likely the result of good behavior and some legal wrangling on the part of his lawyers. The youthful, untamed rapper who entered was now a seasoned pro who knew the true rules of the game. Boosie stayed on parole after being released until 2018, meaning he was still subject to many restrictions and surveillance, and he appeared more hungry than ever. Rebuilding his fan base and releasing project after project, he threw himself back into his music business as if it were his life. Since felons are not allowed to own firearms under federal law, the fact that he was convicted of a felony in 2011 due to a narcotics conviction makes the allegations against him more serious. In the years that followed his release, the same plot continued to unfold. When a deputy saw a white Dodge Charger swerving and almost sideswiping another car during a traffic stop in Noonan, Georgia, in 2019, Boosie was taken into custody. When the officer examined the whip after smelling the sticky yuck, he discovered narcotics and a loaded revolver. However, what transpired in San Diego on the 6th of May 2023 threatened to permanently remove Boosie and his family from the streets. The rapper had come to America's finest city to perform at a club in the Gaslamp Quarter and film a video. It would be just another ordinary business trip that would become his worst legal nightmare since he won that murder case more than 10 years ago. Federal pressure and snitching on social media. On the 6th of May 2023, as the sun was setting over the Cholas View neighborhood of San Diego, and what should have been another day of working hard and earning money for a drunken badass transformed into a federal case that would make headlines for years. The Red Stick rapper, 42, had great plans when he arrived in Southern California. That evening, he was scheduled to perform and film a video at the Phantom Lounge and nightclub in the Gaslamp Quarter. There was some genuine street shit in the whole thing, which was ironic. Boosie, he was sharing his real-time experiences on social media, which was exactly what made him authentic. He had built his entire career on staying loyal to his supporters and never changing anything. Court filings state that San Diego police saw a man, later identified as Boosie, in a home backyard with a black handgun tucked into his belt while they were watching an Instagram live stream of a known local Crip gang member. In the age of social media, where rappers live their lives for their fans, Boosie's natural tendency was to show his followers what was truly happening. Coordinated tracking, several units, and helicopter surveillance. It centered on a rapper who was only in town to meet up with his West Coast fan following and earn some cash. The outcomes were precisely what the guys had hoped for when they finally took action and conducted that traffic stop. From where Boosie was sitting, the situation appeared to be under control. State allegations against him included being an unlisted owner of a registered firearm, carrying a concealed weapon in an automobile, possessing ammunition by a prohibited individual, and possessing a firearm by a felon. He was informed by his attorney, Megan Blanco, that he was willing to enter a plea to the state counts in exchange for probation rather than more jail time.
It was a state case. Your lawyers came in, the state case was dropped.
From a street standpoint, the plan made logical. Boosie's past legal struggles had taught him that sometimes accepting responsibility, cooperating with the system, and keeping things going is the best course of action. After his supporters realized his predicament, the plot took unexpected turns. Based on the same May 6th incident, on the 14th of June, 2023, citing federal regulations that forbid strapping for convicted offenders, the ATF boys had taken over the investigation. Damon Alamori and Megan Blanco described the federal arrest as highly exceptional, claiming that it went against a Justice Department rule that prohibits charging the same person with the same crime twice. They hypothesized that the federal pursuit may have been impacted by Boosie's vocal criticism of the criminal justice system in his music and on social media.
And when appealed the Supreme Court ruling, and they won on the Supreme Court ruling. Now it was back again.
His face was etched with the emotional toll. Boosie made his people know that this felt like open harassment by publicly expressing his dissatisfaction. Boosie was first held after entering a not guilty plea to the federal charges. However, on the 20th of June 2023, a magistrate judge granted him bail on a $50,000 bond, which was then raised to $100,000. The federal lawsuit was looming like a rain cloud over his head, but the conditions allowed him to travel for shows, which gave him some financial security during this stressful time. Boosie was in legal purgatory for more than a year, never knowing when the other shoe might drop. Every aspect of his life and career was being impacted by the uncertainty of perhaps spending decades in federal prison.
Could appeal that, but that'll be 2-3 more years, and I'm just wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
What appeared to be divine intervention occurred, citing a United States ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. U.S. District Judge Kathy Ann Bencivengo dropped the federal firearm possession case on the 12th of July, 2024. He even shared a video of his celebration from the lazy river at the Sequin Casino Resort in San Diego, giving the impression that he had finally moved on from this chapter. This seemed like the happy ending that Boosie's story deserved to Katz, who had followed his path through decades of legal fights. This man was being vindicated by the nation's top courts after surviving the streets, escaping a murder charge, and doing his time. Less than 2 weeks had passed since the dismissal, and they returned with even more vigor. Boosie was reindicted on 2 charges by the Office of U.S. Attorney Tara McGrath on the 19th of July, 2024. One for interstate commerce, firearm possession by a felon, and a new charge of knowingly carrying a firearm while under the influence of or addicted to a controlled substance. All firearms and ammunition implicated were to be forfeited, according to the reindictment. Additionally, Boosie can spend up to 25 years in federal prison if found guilty on both counts.
Celebrating, bro.
And we were celebrating too early.
I was celebrating.
The jolt to the emotions was awful. Boosie was enjoying his liberation and vindication one minute. The next, he was being charged with even more serious offenses, expressing the rage and fury of a person who believed the system was purposefully working to ruin him.
I called on the beach 3 weeks later with my family. Say they just indicted you again. They added a charge, say I was a drug addict.
I think they were trying to use one of my interviews to justify that over something that you were talking about from like 10 years ago.
The inclusion of the drug-related allegation was especially shady because Boosie accused the prosecution of overreaching and questioned why it wasn't in the original indictment, referring to the proceedings as a circus. The timing seems cruelly purposeful, to allow him to rejoice in his freedom, only to take it away once more when the streets stop fighting. By the summer of 2025,
I wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go to trial with it from the dump, actually, but I feel like this the right move for me. I trust in God,
made the judgment that would alter everything. It came from his closest loved ones. During discussions that must have been extremely painful for all parties, this is the proper choice, according to my family. Boosie said on X on the 4th of August 2025 that he had agreed to a plea bargain in the federal firearms case. His enormous fan base and the hip-hop culture were rocked by the announcement, who had declared his innocence and his right to bear arms, and who had defeated a murder prosecution against all odds. He was now abandoning the fight. However, this was not surrender to those who truly knew him. It was a matter of strategic survival.
asking for a fucking pardon. You taking your faith out. You taking your faith out of God. You ask God to put faith in a man.
In making this choice, it was impossible to overlook his mother's wisdom.
Stop asking a man. Stop asking people. So, I trust in God, man. I mean, my prize ain't I don't have no bad prize.
Boosie formally entered a guilty plea to 1 count of felon in possession of a handgun before a federal judge in San Diego on the 26th of August 2025. Boosie's fiancé and family members were present to support him during what may have been one of the most trying times in his life, and the courtroom scene was filled with emotion.
Now, Hatch, known as Boosie to his fans, now awaits sentencing. He's a father of 9 kids. His fiancé was with him in court today. So some background on this case.
Every word he said to reporters outside the courthouse conveyed the gravity of his choice.
So I just want to get it over with, accept my guilty plea. I'm ready to get over it.
Anything you want to say to your fans?
Just say a prayer for him. I just need.
He gave a straightforward and vulnerable response when the media asked him what he most needed from his followers.
Say a prayer for him. I just need prayer. I don't need nothing else. Yeah.
Although federal prosecutors agreed to remove the second firearm allegation, which was tied to drug usage, and suggest a 2-year prison term as part of the plea deal, the crime still carries a potential punishment of 15 years in prison. The plea deal specifics made clear that the offense that gave rise to federal jurisdiction was interstate. Federal prosecutors revealed that on the day of his arrest, Boosie had bought the Glock and Hellcat handguns in Georgia and flown them to San Diego on a Delta Airlines flight. This particular detail met the requirements for interstate trade, which turned it into a federal offense instead of a state one.
In the plea deal, that they throwing that out. I
Okay,
guess.
they threw that out.
And Hatch currently lives in Atlanta. Now he faces a maximum of 15 years behind bars. His defense attorney did not disclose any parts of the plea agreement or any details about it, but the judge made it very clear today, regardless of what's in that plea agreement, it is the sentencing judge who will have the final say.
The human cost of this entire ordeal, however, cannot be quantified in terms of years or money. Despite all the legal jargon and plea bargaining, Megan Blanco, Boosie's lawyer, highlighted the human cost but expressed cautious optimism regarding the sentencing decision. "I am hopeful for Mr. Sald Hatch," she told reporters, highlighting Boosie's philanthropic efforts and contributions to the community. "All he wanted was to take responsibility and move on from this. It is now my responsibility to ensure that the court is aware of the case's scope and its true nature."
And now it's my job to make sure the court understands the scope of the case and what the case is really about. And more importantly, all of the amazing things that Mr. Hatch has done for the community, continues to do, and the amazing things that he will do going forward.
This event is made much more tragic by the sentencing's timeliness. Just a few days after Boosie's birthday, on the 21st of November 2025, the sentencing hearing is set to take place. During what ought to be a time of joy, the 3-year-old father of 9 will find out his destiny and face the prospect of spending his golden years behind bars in a federal prison. Boosie has continued to work hard and perform while free on his $100,000 bond in spite of all the uncertainty.
I'm gonna be at every show, of course. I mean,
Breaking down the chronology of federal court processes, he reassured his supporters,
ain't how I go in Fed court. Once you take a plea, your sentencing ain't till 2-3 months after that. So
he has managed to promote his songs and keep up his concert schedule despite the prospect of spending years behind bars, his record. But throughout this trying time, not everyone in the hip-hop world has showed love. The most outspoken critic has been Charleston White, a divisive personality who has taken advantage of Boosie legal issues to pursue influence and show outright disdain.
Alive on top 5.
White made fun of Boosie's assertion that he was one of the best rappers of all time.
Oh, I hope they send you somewhere where they mistreat Boosie.
Even cats accustomed to White's provocative crap were stunned by the brutality of his continued comments.
God have to push you where you gonna serve him at, NJ?
As evidence of the personal animosity that has grown between these two individuals, Charleston White openly stated his wish for Boosie to pass away while inside. However, there have been innumerable voices of sympathy and compassion for Boosie's predicament for every hateful one. Many in the hip-hop scene have hailed his decision to accept the plea agreement as a mature, calculated action that prioritizes his family's long-term survival over his own ego and sense of street pride.
It's up to the judge to give me credit for my anger monitor. But it's up to God to get to that judge, man. You know, I mean, I'm ready for whatever, Vlad. Like, I'm built like this, Vlad. Like I told you, if God want me free, gonna keep me free.
Even if his future is uncertain, the man has found peace with his choice, as evidenced by the philosophical acceptance in his voice during recent interviews.
Send my ass to jail. That'd be calm. That's all that be.
Well, I mean, you've done it before. I'm being honest.
Right.
This is not me in front of the camera. I've never seen a gun on the coffee table.
The entire hip-hop community is holding its breath as the 21st of November, 2025 draws near, anticipating what will happen to one of its most resilient and genuine voices. The final decision on whether Boosie receives the suggested 2-year sentence, or one that is more in line with the maximum of 15 years, will be made by U.S. District Judge Kathy Bensavengo.
Yeah,
You've been saying
this is the first time I've ever had a judge who I would say is fair. Judges always stuck it to me.
Do you think it's because this judge is in California as opposed to Louisiana? Because you've always had Louisiana judges, right?
Yeah.
When discussing Judge Bencivengo, the optimism in his voice implies that he thinks this could be the fair shake he has been seeking throughout his legal career. It is unclear if Boosie Badazz's time on the streets will come to an end on the 21st of November 2025, or if it will simply be another chapter in his amazing survival tale. His story from the Baton Rouge projects to federal courtrooms in San Diego is undoubtedly one of the most captivating in contemporary hip-hop history. A narrative of unadulterated talent, street cred, tragedy, and, in the end, the ability of people to persevere in the face of adversity. Please click on any of the cards on your screen to view more videos